أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. On behalf of the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement, I am pleased to present to you this live English broadcast of another enlightening discussion entitled Our Islam, Peace, Not Hostility. Joining us today are two eminent contributors. Firstly, we have Imam Dr. Hamid Rahman, Professor of Finance at Alliant International University, based in San Diego, California. Dr. Rahman has done extensive work for the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement. Among them, he has translated Mujaddid Azam Volume 1 from Urdu to English. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Also, we have with us Maulana Mustafa Kemal Haidar, Bachelor of Arts in Islamic Theology from Peshawar University in Pakistan. He is the longest serving missionary of the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement, engaged in propagation of Islam for over 50 years, delivering lectures and publishing articles on various topics of Islam. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Arif. Assalamu alaikum to everyone.
Imam Rahman, as part of the mission of the reformer of the age, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, he was tasked with re-establishing the concept of jihad in order to extinguish the false notion that violence is the core principle in spreading Islam. What, therefore, is the true meaning of jihad?
Well, let me first of all make it quite clear that the interpretation of jihad that Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib gave was not a construct of his own mind. It was very much rooted in the Quran and Sunnah. However, the situation at that time was that most of the Muslims were focusing on such a narrow segment of jihad, and that too in an improper fashion, that when Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib explained what jihad really meant, it was almost held as a charge against him. As a matter of fact, one of the charges made against Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib was that he had refuted the concept of jihad. Fortunately, over a period of time, now the Muslim Ummah, for the most part, accept the same interpretation of jihad that Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad gave almost 100 years back. So let's get to the meaning of what we mean by jihad. Jihad is an Arabic word that means to strive or to struggle, and it is usually used in a positive sense, to strive for something that is good. So the term for fighting in Arabic is qatal, and unfortunately a lot of the Muslim population had interpreted jihad as meaning qatal. What Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib explained was that the jihad in terms of fighting, which of course is restricted to certain situations, is a very small segment of jihad. As a matter of fact, it is a smaller or a lesser segment of jihad, as the Prophet Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself stated while returning from an expedition, that we are going from a lesser jihad to a greater jihad. So what are the other aspects of jihad which Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said that the Muslim nation really needed to focus on at that time? So first of all, there is jihad fil nafs, which is a constant jihad that every person is required to undertake in order to get closer to Allah, to develop himself morally and spiritually. Then there is jihad fil Quran, which is to take the message of Islam to, to the general population in the world, which has not yet received enlightenment from Islam. Then there is jihad against zulm. The Prophet, has been reported as having said that, saying a just word in front of an oppressive sultan is the biggest jihad. Then there is jihad fil kalm, which is to propagate Islam, to explain Islam to other people with the pen. And jihad bil saf is sometimes becomes necessary, but there are certain conditions that have been laid down for that kind of a jihad. And what Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib said, that those conditions are not fulfilled at this particular time. And therefore, the need of the hour is to wage jihad with the Quran and with the qalb, with the pen. So that's basically the meaning that he gave. And fortunately, as I said, most of the Muslim Ummah has come round to accepting that meaning of jihad.
Thank you very much, Imam. Maulana Haidar. Those who promulgate an ideology of Islam as being the religion of the sword often quote chapter 2, verse 216 of the Quran as justification for their actions. Have they misinterpreted the intent behind this verse?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'd, fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. It's important in answering that question to take into consideration, first of all, we are using language of man, the English language, to explain and interpret the language of God. Now, the English language is a language that is what I would consider a very deceitful language. Words can be used in this language that can easily deceive people. And English is so widely spoken that it has influenced other languages as well and made them also interpret their own original expressions incorrectly, and particularly Arabic, because the Arabic that is spoken in the Muslim world and that which is mentioned in the Quran is not always the same. And there are many people who speak Arabic and cannot understand the teachings of the Quran. The founder of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam has pointed out to us that in this day and age, this is the age of what is called Dajjal. Dajjal means deceit. And it is not so much that a people or some creature that is Dajjal, it is the attitude of people which is deceitful. And we would see nowadays that when it comes to language, you would find that the language that we use nowadays is often described as spin or fake news. That is so common nowadays. So that we see that the English language really can be used to present truth as falsehood. And this is something that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Lahori had predicted in his very first book, Barahini Ahmadiyya, where he said, in this day and age, you will find that the truth is promoted as falsehood is promoted as if it is true. In other words, you're going to get a lot of fake news. It is in this light, therefore, that we understand that the word that is used for fighting in the Quran and the words that are used in jihad in the Quran is not the same interpretation that even Arabic-speaking people use, because the word qatl in Arabic does not mean to kill. It means in Arabic we say qatl al-shay. That is, a person knew to know something or became acquainted with something. We say qatalahu ilm, he knew it completely or very well. The Quran, the Arabic language, you say qatal al-kamar bilma. That is, wine can be tempered down, can be diluted. So qatl really means to overpower, to control, to subdue. It doesn't mean to kill. Of course, there are different ways in which you can use that subjugation, by word, by weapon even. It is only a secondary meaning that if you use a weapon and you control someone, it is likely that that person can be killed. So qatala really, or qatala in Arabic, means two people who are trying to overpower each other, two people who are doing battle. As some children play the games of battling, we speak about the battle against cancer. It doesn't mean that you're using weapons, or the fight against poverty. These are expressions that are so common in every language. But when it comes to interpretation of the Quran, we find that the word jihad and qatl are used only in one particular sense, a sense which is not there originally, but which is a secondary meaning. We speak about the fight against the coronavirus, against disease, against the battle against cancer or poverty. So in English language, even when we use the word battle and fighting, it doesn't always mean violence or bloodshed. So that it is extremely important for us to realize that this is not the teaching of Islam. Islam is a religion of peace, not hostility. If you look at the teachings of other faith systems, you will find that in the Bible, even when the human being was in paradise, there was disobedience to God. There was the devil there. We had the first murder that took place, soon after human beings were created. You look at the Exodus, and you will see Moses when he brought the law. Just even before that, while he was in Misr, while he was in the land where his people were slaves, a lot of people were killed before the children of Israel could be exiled. Here you speak, you're hearing historically violence against people in other faith systems. You look at when Jesus Christ was born, there were thousands, hundreds of innocent children that were killed in his name. Let us look at the time of the Prophet Muhammad. Let us look at what the Prophet Muhammad gave to us. The very first revelation he gave was Iqra bismi rabbika allazi khalaq. Human beings are created from alaq. Now, alaq is a clot of blood. So, in other words, the very first message of Islam is blood that cohesive, that sticks together, not bloodshed. And it's important for us to know that the very first words of the Prophet Muhammad was that blood should not be shed, but blood should be it should keep people together. And that is what Allah means. It also means love. It also means connection and so on. So that we would see that the message or the interpretation of the Quran is definitely incorrect. So that when we try to just explain away the English language to explain the divine language, you can run into problems. And this is why it is so important for us in this day and age to have someone who has come from God, whom God has taught how to interpret the Quran. And that is the role of the Mujaddid. That is the role of the founder of the Ahmadi movement in Islam, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Lahori.
Thank you very much, Maulana Haidar. Imam Dr. Rahman, what are the methods that one should adopt in responding to abuse and mockery of the religion of Islam?
Thank you. I don't know whether your audience has had a chance to read this book called Islam, Peace and Tolerance. Let's get it over here.
Yes.
It's written by Dr. Zahid Aziz, and it's an excellent book. I think if one goes through this book, you basically get a very, very good idea of how to respond. It has got a whole chapter on this particular subject that you are that deals with the question that you are asking right now. And essentially, if people are abusing Islam, it could be because they do not have knowledge of Islam. So the first thing that is required is that if there is any criticism of Islam that can be refuted, one should go ahead and do that. And sometimes, the other person may be able to understand then that, what the actual position is, and may then stop criticizing Islam or abusing Islam because his or her criticism was coming from a place of ignorance, because they did not really understand, what was the true meaning or what was the true teaching of Islam. And but there are folks who do understand Islam, but they just criticize for the sake of criticism. And for such people, the Quran has basically provided us with all of the guidance with regards to how to deal with such a situation. Okay, so the first thing is that the Quran asks us to be patient and not basically become aggressive in that situation. Of course, as I said earlier, that if there is some criticism that needs to be answered, because that should properly be answered, then the second step is that you leave the society or you leave the gathering in which people are mocking Islam or saying things about Islam that you do not like, and then you can rejoin that gathering once they have changed the subject. So there are a number of verses of the Quran that I think look at this situation and really give us a very good idea of how we should behave in such a situation. So, for instance, this is a verse from chapter 3, verse 186, which says, "You will certainly hear much abuse from the followers of previous books and from the idol worshipping people. And if you are patient and keep your duty, this is surely a matter of great resolution." This is chapter 3, verse 186. Then there is a hadith of the Holy Prophet that says, "The Muslim who mixes with the people and bears patiently their hurtful words is better than one who does not mix with people and does not show patience under their abuse." So this is a great a lesson for us that we need to show patience when people are uh, abusing Islam. Then here's another verse, which is from chapter 4, verse 140. "When you hear Allah's messages disbelieved in and mocked at, do not sit with them until they enter into some other discourse." Then this is verse 70, chapter 73, verse 10. "And bear patiently what they say and forsake them with a becoming withdrawal." So there are a number of other verses. These are just a handful of the verses that I have basically told you. And there are incidents from the life of the Holy Prophet which clearly indicate that abuse is not to be met with violence, but when it can be rationally refuted, one should refute that abuse. And when the abuse is just for the sake of abuse, then you should either leave that particular gathering and show patience in such a situation, and pray to Allah that Allah changes the hearts of the people who are abusing Islam. And as we saw in many instances during the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that people who would abuse Islam then actually became very staunch followers of Islam. So that's the way for us to go, not to resort to violence, but to be patient and to keep striving, to spread the correct message of Islam.
Thank you very much, Imam Dr. Rahman, for giving us the peaceful methods by which we should counter arguments and abusive behavior towards Muslims and the religion of Islam. Maulana Haidar, in order to justify waging war, we have those who say that their aim is to counter the Kafirun. However, when we look at the that bears that title, Al-Kafirun, chapter 109, it states very clearly, for you your way, and for me my way. Can we get an understanding of the concept of kufar?
First of all, this is an incorrect translation of kafir as being disbeliever, unbeliever. Nowhere in the Quran is there a word for disbelief or unbelief, because the Quran points out to us quite clearly that every human being believes in God. That is innate in us. It's impossible to not believe in God. People say they don't believe in God, but the Quran describes that as being ungrateful. God has given you a gift of knowledge of Him internally and in so many externally, and in so many ways. And if you don't accept that, then you are ungrateful. So the word kufr really means to cover, and it means to cover the truth. So you have to have the truth before you can cover it. You willingly cover it. Kafir really is ungratefulness. And it is really an attitude. So when the Quran says in Qul Ya ayyuhal kafirun, or those who are ungrateful, you will see lakum deenukum waliyadeen. If you are ungrateful, if you don't make full use, and kufr is the opposite of shukr in the Quran. Shukr means to be grateful, to make full use of what Allah has given you or what anybody has given you. You say thanks for something because you're grateful. So that when you find the Quran says lakum deenukum waliyadeen, for you is the outcome of your approach, your attitude of ungratefulness, you will see the outcome. Take for example, if you have two students who are writing an exam, and one decides to study, on the other side, one fails to make use of the knowledge, the teachers' teachings, the books, or whatever it is, and writes the exam, you will find that the outcome will be different. A person may pray all that he wants and say, well, oh God, I want to pass my exam, but doesn't study, he's not making use of the what Allah has given to him, then that person will certainly fail. He can't expect Allah will come down and cheat for him in the examination. So this is what is meant by lakum deenukum waliyadeen, that you will see the outcome of your ungratefulness, and I will see the outcome because I don't la abudu ma ta'budun. I don't have the same attitude as you have towards the same object, whether it is Allah or whatever it may be. So that is why we have to understand that the Quran is quite clear. It focuses on building people's faith in themselves, in their community, their society, their leaders, their creator, and making use of all the gifts that has been given to them so that they can build their personality. So that when people talk about kufr and calling other people kafir, that you're outside the pale of Islam, all that is real, I would call it nonsense. Because you have to ask yourself, what is Islam? And there are so many different versions of Islam. Every sect has a different understanding of Islam. In fact, you have two things. You have the Quran and you have the Hadith. Which will we accept? Where the Quran says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Be united, get together by means of the Quran. And the Hadith which says that my people will be 73 sects and all of them will go to hell except one. So it means that a majority of Muslims, if we take the Hadith, are incorrect in their approach, and only those who hold fast by the Quran will in fact be the ones who are correct. So let us look at, even if someone were to ask you the question, was the Prophet Muhammad a Muslim? That's a question I'm sure many Muslims cannot understand. Will you say he's a Muslim by birth because there was no Islam at that time? Will we say he was a Muslim when he received revelation? In the very first 5 verses of revelation of the Prophet Muhammad to the Prophet Muhammad, the five verses that were revealed, the word Allah doesn't even come there. Yes, Prophet Muhammad believed in God. Then what about prayer? He didn't start praying 5 times per day until the Miraj. Some say that Miraj occurred 5 years after prophethood, some say 10 years. Then fasting came much later on. Then even Hajj came. So if we say that the 5 pillars of Islam is what makes you a Muslim, then the Prophet Muhammad perhaps was not a Muslim until maybe late in his life. Does it mean that he was a non-Muslim for all of his life? No. The thing is, if we look at Islam as a religion of peace, not hostility, we will see the Prophet Muhammad from childhood was a person who upheld peace, not hostility. And that is something extremely important that we need to look at and we need to realize. So that this is what is required in today's day and age. That is, the world is looking forward to and towards a Messiah who will come and rescue it. Muslims want Jesus Christ to come back. Christians want Jesus Christ to come back. But the Muslims want Jesus to come to destroy Christianity, and the Christians want Jesus to come to destroy Islam. So somebody is coming who is coming for two different people for two opposite purposes. And both of these communities expect that when Jesus comes, when the Messiah comes, he will bring what is called Armageddon or apocalypse or wars and fighting and killing the swine, doing all kinds of. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, when Lahori, when he came and said he's the Messiah, he is a Messiah who brings peace and harmony, not the kind of he has come to bring people together. If you look at one of his lectures that he gave in in Sialkot on the 4th of November 1904, and I've been to Sialkot and I've seen the room where Mirza Ghulam Ahmad sat. It's a small room with just a little window, very dark, and just a window to give light. I don't think it's much bigger than the cave of Hira. And he wrote in that lecture on Sialkot, and I wish that some people could translate it into from Urdu to English. I read it many years ago, but I'm reading it again. He said, I am the Messiah for Muslims, for Hindus, for Christians, for Jews. And in the arguments that he puts forward arguments which are so simple, so easy to understand, that it is essential for us to really read his writings to see how to, as you put the question to Dr. Rahman just a while ago, that is how to refute the objection against Islam. Take, for example, one illustration, one instance, where Muslims believe, for example, that Jesus Christ is dead and raised up to heaven. And they quote chapter 4, verse 158, which says, Bal rafa Allah ilahi, that is, God raised him unto himself. In this book, Mirza Sahib has spoken about raising of Jesus Christ. And he puts forth a very simple argument. Now, there are many people who have written on this subject and would quote Quran, would quote Hadith, would quote other scholars in Islam to interpret this. But he has put one simple argument, although in other places he has put quite a few arguments from the Quran. He says, look, for example, if Allah raised him to himself, or raised him into his presence, or however you interpret it, when the Prophet Muhammad went on Miraj, he saw Jesus in the second heaven. Does it mean Allah is in the second heaven? And there are prophets of God in the sixth and fifth and sixth and so on. The Prophet Muhammad passed the second heaven, and he went even beyond what is called the furthest low tree in order to have an audience with God. And Jesus Christ was way down in the second heaven. So how could we really say that Allah raised him to himself when Jesus is one place and Allah is somewhere else? So that interpretation, that simple argument you can put to even a child, they will understand that you cannot interpret that verse of the Quran to mean that God took him up bodily into heaven. So that Mr. Saab has indicated to us that that we have to realize that terrorism must not be a salvation for the world. And that is one of the things in today's world we are seeing, where people are saying that God sent his only son and crucified him on the cross in order to save mankind. That is terrorism. Why should an innocent person be put by God and crucified and killed in order to have the salvation for mankind? So Jesus did not die as a result of Jewish terrorism or any other God's terrorism. He didn't die on the cross, simply. He was taken down alive, and he conquered terrorism by staying alive, and it gave him a new direction, which is that is in Kashmir. So that when we look at Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Lahori, we see that he was the first Muslim to rise up against the concept of terrorism among Muslims. And he came to abolish jihad. Now, as Dr. Rahman pointed out just a while ago, unfortunately, Muslims have attacked him and said he has changed our religion. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad has removed jihad. But no, he says, I am not removing jihad. I am emphasizing jihad. I am removing the wrong jihad. Because what people see in non-Muslims see in the Quran, they see a lot of things about fighting and killing and so on. Quran, as a perfect book, is also partially a military manual. Every society, every country in the world has military manuals telling you how to manage war, and the Quran is no exception. In fact, one Chinese philosopher even wrote a book called The Art of War. You'd be surprised to know, only yesterday I received an email from an organization I constantly in contact with that does woodworking. And they sent me an invitation to get free firearms training. I want to know, what does that have to do with woodworking and use of machinery to create things means of wood. But it shows the kind of society that says, on the one hand, turn the other cheek, and now encouraging people for law and order and violence and, as a means of containing people. You find there's a contradiction in society. And that is why it is so important not only to have Islam as a religion of peace, not hostility, but have it from a person who has been guided by God. And it is so important for us to realize not so much what jihad is not, but what jihad is. Jihad is based on belief, behavior based on belief. And behavior, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Lahori has said, that behavior involves two types of actions: actions which do no harm to others, and actions which do good to others. And Islam is an opportunity and a method to develop divine qualities in us and in ourselves and in our community. It is so much more important to explain, to understand that there are four challenges that Muslims face. Mr. Ghulam Ahmad Lahori has pointed out. The first is rejection of God. The second is rejection of divine revelation. The third is the rejection of the Prophet Muhammad. And the fourth is rejection of Islam as a religion of peace. This is where we need jihad to fight against and to battle against these kinds of rejections. And the Quran points out to us that there's a right jihad and there's a wrong jihad. The right jihad, the wrong jihad we know, but the right jihad is of two types. The jihad of patience, as Dr. Rahman said, and that is the jihad of the Muslim who's controlling his anger, as the Quran says, Qazimin al-Ghaiz, to control your anger. For that, the Muslim requires the power of God to help him control his emotions and contain himself so that he'll be non-violent. This is where Islam has that perfect method of doing so, as we have seen the failure of other religions to prevent violence. We have seen the Gita and the Mahabharata is books that deal with battle and fighting and killing, not so the Quran. And then the Quran speaks of the jihad of defense. Now, this is not a jihad of Muslims, this is a jihad of God. The Quran says that it is Allah who will protect houses of worship. But he is not going to come down here and fight his battles. Allah is not that being. He relies on the Muslims, so he relies on his servants in order to fight that battle for him. So that jihad of defense is really not our battle. That is God's battle. And when he determines, he will use whatever resources to maintain the truth that he has revealed in the Quran and to his servants. Now, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad has pointed out to us that non-Muslims must give up this concept of calling jihad as a holy war and a battle. Because the more they say that Muslims are people who are violent and terrorists, the more they are putting that into their minds, they engendering that concept among Muslims themselves. So they are the ones who have to stand up and say that that concept is wrong. But he also pointed out that Muslim scholars too must unite and declare jihad as un-Islamic. And indeed, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad writes, those who join my army, an army here doesn't mean arms and ammunition. It means a group of people, an anjuman, people who come together, a community. I order them to give up these misconceived ideas of jihad with the sword and weapons, and to purify their hearts, develop and nurture their feelings of mercy towards all humankind, and helpers of those in distress and suffering. Ahmadis take a bayat, we take an oath, we take a code of ethics not to injure anyone. So that it is so important and relevant for us to understand in today's world that the Ahmadiyya movement is really, and the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement, I want to emphasize, is really a salvation for the world, because we have the concept of a Messiah who is not a prophet, We have to start focusing now on removing the stigma of kufr from the name of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Lahori, because his name and his teachings and his writings are so extremely important. I just want to mention here, Dr. Rahman is from Ahmedabad, and I spent a lot of months there, as he knows, studying the Quran with my teacher, N.A. Faruqi. And N.A. Faruqi was the son of Dr. Basharat Ahmad, and he told me a lot of stories about his father. One of the stories he told me, he says, my father was given Dars, explanation of Quran, in Delhi some years ago, and a man came in and he sat down, listened to the Dars, and afterwards he came up to Dr. Basharat Ahmad and said, I saw that on the outside Anjuman Ahmadi Anjuman Isha'at Islam, and I have read Maulana Muhammad Ali's teachings, and I saw that and I knew that name, so I came here to hear what you have to say. And I have read his translations and books, and I feel he's the Mujaddid of the age. And Dr. Basharat told him, no, he is not. There's somebody greater than him, and that is Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. And as Dr. Rahman and you have pointed out, he wrote a biography which is the best biography of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Lahori. Even the Qadianis have not been able to produce a book like that. And thanks to Dr. Rahman, we now have that in English. So that we have a lot of work to do in understanding the role, the teachings, and the approach of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad in the propagation of Islam. And I hope, inshallah, we, as Dr. Rahman himself has mentioned in his lecture last year in UK, that we have to have a proper approach where we have a good product, we have a good marketing plan, and we have a good financing, and we need to have product enhancement. That is, we must have a more attractive packaging. And that's where the Ahmadiyya Lahore Operations Center is doing research and development, and we hope that all Ahmadis will unite behind us in really presenting a new model of Islam to remove terrorism and wrong concept, and to produce Islam, present Islam as a religion of peace, not hostility.
Thank you very much, Maulana Haidar. I do have a question that I will hope both presenters can weigh in on, and it is, having regard to the Islam that is portrayed by so-called terror organizations, is it more essential than ever in these times for us to identify what our Islam is? Imam Dr. Rahman, if you can give us your comment on that.
Yes, definitely. We need to project ourselves, and that's one area I think that since quite a few years we have not been able to do sufficiently. As Maulana Haidar was referring to my talk in UK, we have an excellent product, but where we have failed is in the marketing aspect of it. We have not been able to take this product and disseminate it widely amongst the people. So yes, it's absolutely essential that we need to project ourselves. But unfortunately, with this new situation that has arisen in Pakistan, essentially, and also has spread to some other Muslim countries, that Ahmadis are not Muslims. It's becoming more and more difficult for us to project ourselves because of the fact that people reject us offhand, saying that, oh, I mean, you've been declared non-Muslim, so whatever you say, regardless of whether it makes sense or not, is something that we are not just willing to listen to. So that is the kind of barrier we have to struggle against. But that is again a jihad that we have to wage. To get the message across by whatever means possible. And of course, the great advantage these days is the availability of the social media. And that allows us to put the message out for people who are non-biased and can read the message and would get influenced by that. So I agree with what the questioner has asked, has basically questioned.
Thank you, Dr. Rahman. Maulana?
it's important for us to identify ourselves, yes. And, as Dr. Rahman was speaking, I recall chapter 18 of the Quran, which the Prophet Muhammad had said that in this day and age, refer to that. And if you look at the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement, we have done yeoman's work uh, for over about 60 years. We have created a nation of Islam in the West with what is called the Black Muslims, through Elijah Muhammad and so on. We are well aware of that. There are thousands of millions of Muslims who have accepted Islam because of the work of the Ahmadiyya movement. In chapter 18 of the Quran, it speaks about, people who were put to sleep for a little while, and then Allah raised them up again. The Lahore Ahmadiyya movement has been asleep for a couple decades, perhaps, a couple of years. And this was also to give a chance to the other section, the Qadiani section. How come they have not done much to propagate Islam or remove some of these ideas? In fact, they have merely consolidated themselves. People say, well, they are a large organization. Well, if they are a large organization, they have more resources. They should have been doing more work. From who has, great resources, much is expected of them. So that, yes, the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement has been asleep for a little while, but the time has come where we are now awake. We're woken up, and now our members all over the world are, in fact, getting together, and we are looking at the issues and the challenges that we face with. And as Dr. Rahman has said too, we are looking at the threats that are against us, and we are going to manage that and propagate Islam. So it is important for all those who listen to this program to really rally around the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement. If we have problems in Pakistan, we in Toronto here will be united with the other Anjumans all over the world to set up an Ahmadiyya Lahore Operations Center where we'll be dealing with the issue of immigration and propagation and, all the things that go with presenting Islam as a religion of peace, not hostility.
Thank you very much, Maulana Haidar. I just want to acknowledge one comment from one of our viewers who says, Holy Quran says that Abraham was a Muslim, so Islam was there before Prophet Muhammad. I thought that was quite interesting. Can we examine that very briefly?
Well, the Quran quite clearly says we named you Muslims before, and in this, yes, we know that. So that the reason why Islam Ahmadiyya movement points out that Islam is based upon two principles. That is faith in God and the Prophet Muhammad. Now you can say, well, what about Abraham? He was a Muslim, he believed in Allah, but he didn't believe in the Prophet Muhammad. That is not so. Every prophet of God believed in the Prophet Muhammad, because the Quran tells us in chapter 3 that there was a Misak-in Nabiyyin, a covenant with all the prophets to their people, with their people, that when the last prophet come, they will accept. So they were all expecting the last prophet. And I have seen evidence, even in countries like Mexico and other places where you have ancient religions of prophecies of the coming of the Prophet Muhammad. Maulana Abdul Haq Bidiyarti, which was my teacher also, has written a book, Muhammad in World Scriptures, to show that every prophet and every scripture has spoken about the Prophet Muhammad. His name is even mentioned in the Old Testament. It is mentioned in the Hindu scriptures, that name Muhammad. So that Islam is based upon peace that comes from God, and peace that is demonstrated to the Prophet Muhammad, who showed peace, not hostility. And we must always remember that Muhammad spent most of his life, the majority of his life, fostering peace rather than hostility and war. The idea of him spreading Islam by the sword is nonsense. It's fake news. And we can prove that. I can tell you how many people died during the time of the Prophet Muhammad in battle. And I can even supply you the names if you want. But they were just about 80 people or less than that among the disbelievers who died during the entire lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad in a propagation of Islam. So it's pure rubbish to say that Islam was spread by the sword. So that it is important for us to realize that yes, Islam is a universal religion. Mirza Sahib has explained this in his book, as I mentioned, and his lecture on Islam given in Sialkot, written in Sialkot.
Thank you, Maulana. Imam Rahman, is there anything you want to add as I give you the final word on this subject?
Well, I think the Maulana has, covered everything very thoroughly. I have nothing more to add. But I'd just like to say that the lecture in Sialkot has been translated. It is in Mujaddid-e-Azam Volume 1. So for anybody who's sort of interested, I mean, if they get hold of Mujaddid-e-Azam Volume 1, which is the Great Reformer Volume 1, was translated in English, then the lecture is there, yes.
And parts of it is also available in religions in English. Just after the same month, November, some of it was translated and printed in English. But perhaps a revised, well, I have to look at your translation as well to see, compared to the original, and see how we can, make the. But the important thing is the ideas that he has expressed here, where he has pointed out right at the beginning. Mr. Ghulam Ahmad Lahori has said, all religions are like gardens. They could bring fruits and flowers, they bring joy to people. But unfortunately, they decay after a while. You get weeds, you get serpents, you get snakes, you get all kinds of creatures in them within those gardens. And then God sends prophets to refresh those gardens, to replace them. As the Quran says, when you send revelation, we bring one better than it or one like it. He says, but when the Prophet Muhammad came with the last prophet, no other prophet is going to come to refresh this garden. And same problem will happen with the Islamic garden, the garden of Islam. It's going to have its weeds and so on. And that is why Mujaddids come, who are the gardeners, who will now refresh this garden and make it beautiful once again. I remember some years ago, late Maulana Simtufal used to tell me, and he told me that, Islam is like a picture which has become covered with grime and grease. And the Mujaddid comes and he wipes the picture, removes all the grime, and so you see the original beauty of Islam. So that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Lahori has not come to bring a new religion. He has come to show us the pristine purity of Islam that existed in the time of the Prophet Muhammad, in the time of Abraham, in the time of all prophets of God. It's the same garden, just improved varieties that have come about. And now we have perennial plants in the garden of Muhammad. Whereas before some plants decayed, now we have perennial plants that will last for all time, and we need to really make this garden, fresh and alive again, so that remember the words of Mirza Ghulam Muhammad. Islam se na bhago rahe huda yahi hai, ai sone walu jago shamshud duha yahi hai. This is the light of the midday sun. Just get up and wake up from our sleep and really promote the Islam that we have been guided to by Allah's Mujaddid to interpret in a way that is acceptable to the world.
Thank you. My dear viewers, may we adopt the principles and systems of Islam. May we placate those who propound a wrong concept of Islam. The peaceful methods have worked in the past to create a better human being, and a new understanding of them will ensure that they work in the present and in the future. Islam works to bring about harmony among all human beings. Thank you very much to our revered panelists, Imam Dr. Hamid Rahman and Maulana Mustafa Kemal Haidar. Thank you also to our viewers for your participation, as well as your questions and comments. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more enlightening discussions on Islam. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ameen.